Well, seeing as how we wrapped up last year's Christmas in July with the original Christmas story, let's wrap up this year's Christmas in July by taking a look at the real best Christmas story sequel ever. Yeah, I know I mentioned 8-Bit Christmas a couple of weeks ago, but nevertheless, A Christmas Story Christmas is not only the best Christmas Story sequel, but it is really the definitive Christmas Story sequel. No, Christmas Story 2 does not count, even though it says it's the official sequel to A Christmas Story. Get away with me with that shit. Give me the one that has the actual Ralphie in it, and a couple of other characters from the original movie, except for Melinda Dillon, who I believe was still alive when this was being made, but she's been replaced by someone else. But we'll get to that in just a second here. But it is now 33 years after the original Christmas Story, and Ralphie is now all grown up. He's 42 years old. He lives in Chicago with his wife Sandy, played by Erin Hayes. And, he's now an adult and a struggling novelist, and he returns to his childhood home in Indiana in 1973 following the death of his father, the old man, to deliver a magical Christmas for his mother, played by Julie Haggerty. And overall, yeah, it's a good. Everyone in here does their parts very well here, and it does kind of suck not to have the old man in this, because even in the worst movies of the Christmas, even in the worst of the Christmas Story films, the old man is still the best part of those movies. Like in My Summer Story, Charles Grodin is great as the old man in that. Even in something as bad as A Christmas Story 2, Daniel Stern is still putting a lot of effort into that role. And even in something like A Christmas Story Live, I mean, you got Chris Diamantopoulos as the old man. I mean, that guy is a treasure. The guy can do Mickey Mouse, he can do Moe from the Three Stooges, and he can do the old man so well. Like, you put him in anything, it's instant gold with him in particular. He's the one thing that will save that film from complete and utter disaster overall. But this one, I am glad to see that this one finally gets A Christmas Story right, and it's made by people who clearly know what they're doing and how to make a sequel that doesn't feel like it's forcing the references or the nods to the first movie on purpose. Like it's not on purpose. What am I trying to say here? Like it doesn't feel like A Christmas Story 2 where they're just forcing the references on you. No, this is made by people that clearly know what they're doing and what they have to do to make a good story that continues the story from the original Christmas Story. And it's done very, very well. And it helps that you have a director like Clay Kaytis, who gave us stuff like the Angry Birds movie and actually directed a pretty good Christmas movie on Netflix a couple of years prior with the Christmas Chronicles. And he's also done a lot of Snoopy stuff for the Apple TV Plus show specials they've done. So yeah, they got a guy that clearly knows what he's doing in general here. And it is cool to see Ralphie growing up with a family of his own. Peter Billingsley once again tackles the role of Ralphie very well. It's cool to see him back with all those old friends, a lot of them played by the same people from the first movie. Scott Schwartz is back in this one. So is Zach Ward as Scott Farkas, who's now a police officer here, which, of course, that's expected to happen with him. But I will say, I was a little bit worried early on when, it starts off and it starts doing the stuff from the first movie, like where, Ralphie's talking to the book publisher and he all of a sudden has a fantasy, because, that happens a lot in A Christmas Story too, even in parts where it doesn't make any sense to have that in there. But luckily, it's not something that happens all over the place. I mean, it's something that happens every once in a while, and once again, it doesn't feel like they're just doing it so they can have these nods to the original film. That was one of the biggest things about these other Christmas Story projects between the first film and this movie in particular, and the fact is that they felt like they were doing nothing but just ripping off what made the original so special. And because the fact that it was always playing 24 hours a day on Christmas Day on both TBS and TNT, it felt like these companies were obligated to not only make parodies, but make really god-awful parodies of these, and then eventually made their way to terrible movies and terrible spin-offs. And case in point, what we got with A Christmas Story 2 and A Christmas Story Live. But this in particular really does feel like a true, authentic sequel that doesn't feel like it's forcing itself on you. Everything in it is earnest. It doesn't have that same... It's nowhere near as good as the original film. I'll say that right off the bat. The original is just... You can't top that classic overall. But this one does just as good of enough of a job to have the callbacks there and don't have them feel forced in. And it does feel like a story that does feel like something from the 1970s. It doesn't feel like it's being made by somebody who thinks that if you write in 2012 logic, it'll automatically make it seem like it'll fit for this particular time period they're trying to write for here. And again, having Peter Billingsley back in here plays a big part in this. You can tell that he and the producers Vince Vaughn and I guess that's it. I guess Vince Vaughn was one of the only producers that came from the Wild West Picture Show that worked on this year, because they've been working together on films for over 25 years. I mean, these are the guys that worked. They were. I mean, Peter Billingsley was an elf, for God's sakes. I mean, but then again, Vince Vaughn wasn't in that movie. But Vince Vaughn, Jon Favreau. I mean, those guys were always worked together back then. But I'm just kind of rambling on here at this point. But like I said, I like the movie a lot. I think it does a good job of giving you the definitive Christmas Story sequel that doesn't feel like it's forcing its way with the cheap nods to the first film, lazy comedy, pointless scenes of everyone taking their clothes off. Like, if you remember Christmas Story 2, for some reason they all took their pants off way too much in that movie. It's just like, what is even happening here? But like I said, it doesn't happen in this movie here. Far from it. It actually does feel about as close to the original Christmas Story as you can possibly get. It's well done. It's perfectly handled. It's really good. It's a really good sequel. It doesn't quite live up to par with the original film, but nevertheless, still a fantastic movie. Still a great film. Great way to end another Christmas in July here. And yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me on this. I like doing this now. I mean, there are so many Christmas specials and movies that I completely forgot to put on this list for this year that I'm definitely going to remember for next year for certain. But it's great to see that you guys are watching this in particular here. And if you do want to see more of these videos here, there's always the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button. So yeah, another Christmas in July in the books. I'll see you guys next year for that. And until then, have yourself a Merry Christmas, and I'll see you guys next time.
Entire kid year revolved. Downtown Holman was prepared for its annual bacchanalia of peace on earth and goodwill to men. But more importantly to one boy, his quest to acquire the most coveted gift a 9-year-old could hope for. The holy grail of Christmas gifts.
The Red Ryder 200-shot range model air rifle.